How's it, data fam? Welcome to the second episode of our Excel Fundamentals for Data Analyst course. So today we're going to be talking about something very important, right? We're going to be talking about how to import data onto Excel. Now, you're probably wondering, why should you be importing data onto Excel? Look, not in every case you'll be getting data in an Excel format. Sometimes they might send you data in a CSV format. Sometimes you need to connect to a database. Sometimes you need to connect to a completely different platform, right? So importing data is a way for you to get data from various areas. So what Microsoft has done, they've given you a wide range of ways you can actually import data using Excel because they understand that the data that you'll be working with would not always come in Excel formats. Sometimes it might come in CSV, TXT, and all those different formats. And sometimes you might even want to extract data from websites or even from emails or pictures and stuff like that. So this session is going to cover how exactly you can import data from all those different options. So let's get into it. Now, the moment that you open Excel, this is the view that you'll see. I'm sure you guys remember from what we covered in the previous episode. So at the top over here, you've got your different ribbons. So this is where you get to see all the different features or functionalities that actually Excel comes with. So the most important area, if you want to import data onto Excel, it is not insert because insert does not have those capabilities or those options. So if you go on to data, so if you want to import data onto Excel, you need to go to data. So this is where you normally find all the different ways of actually importing data onto Excel. Now, there's a number of options, right? You've got from pictures, you can actually import data from pictures, your recent sources, existing connections, from TXT, CSV, even websites, right? If you want to import data from a website, you can actually do that. And you've got your very popular ways of importing data, which is get data. It's actually in preview, so you can actually get data from a file. So this is your standard JSON stuff like that, databases, Azure, and all those different options that you normally need to have data on Excel, right? So this is a really nice capability, allowing you to bring data from different sources. Now, we're going to start with the very basic one, which is importing data from a picture, right? So I'm just going to select a picture over here. So you just click on the picture, and then if you click from picture, you can actually see that it's just going to give me an option to actually load my data set. So I'm going to go to downloads over here, and I'll click on that one. Then I'll say insert. Cool. So now that I've clicked on insert, what it's going to do is that it will read the data from the picture. So as you can see over here, this is actually a thumbnail that I wanted to that I added for my recent video. But you can see that this thumbnail says Microsoft certification platform, and it pulled out the micro certification in the platform, and it also brought out Microsoft LAN, and you can see that the Whittle and Data Clarence Academy thing there at the bottom is actually, so it's a really good AI feature that actually extracts data from pictures. So it's, if you guys have a lot of data sitting on pictures and you're wondering what is the best way for you to actually import this data and start using it, this is the best way you can actually do it. So once you're happy with what it is actually extracted, you can say insert data, just say, and so we don't want to review. I think we're happy with the data set. So what it does then, it then takes the data and puts it over here. So now if this was valuable data that you genuinely wanted to extract, you've just imported data from an image. So if you guys have a lot of pictures and you're wondering how exactly you can import data from a picture, that's how you do it using Excel. Now, the next option, which I think is also very useful, is recent sources. Now, recent sources, normally this checks the different, if you've recently added data from any sort of source, it normally checks your most recent sources. So these are the sources that I've recently sort of like interacted with. So I think it's a cool feature just to keep memory of the your recent sources. Existing connections, this one only works if you've got some sort of like existing connections to certain databases and stuff like that. So we do not have that, so it's not really going to work for us in this case. But this is a very useful feature if you want to connect from existing sources. Now let's look at the very popular one, right? So importing data from TXT or CSV. Now, normally your data, as I've said, is not always in Excel format, sometimes in CSV or TXT. So all you need to do is to click on from. Now, once you click on that, you can see there's different, it takes you to a place where you can actually select your data sources. So I want to import data from, let's say, customers, right? I click on that and I click on enter. Now, what it does, it tries to import the data. It reads whatever is in that file format, and once you get a preview of the data, right? If you're happy with the data, you don't need to transform it and stuff like that. So we're going to be covering transforming data in the other episodes. But today we're just going to load the data set, right? So I'm going to load this data set. So once you click on load the data set, it actually reads the data again and it tries to create a table using the data set. And as you can see over here, is that it has now imported our data in this format with nice coloring and all of that. So that is how you can actually import data from CSV or TXT. Now, the other very cool feature is from website. Now, have you ever wanted to import data from a website, but the problem was that it's going to take time, right? You want to extract this valuable data from a website or scraping data from a website, but there's actually an easier way or a quicker way of actually getting the data so that you can do your analysis. Now, this is getting data from a website because sometimes the data that you need could be sitting in a website, right? Maybe the website actually keeps track of daily changes, let's say the stock market prices and stuff like that. And you just want to scrape the data maybe every single morning and stuff like that. This is how you do it. So once you click on from website, you get an option to say URL. So the URL is like the link to the website. So I'm going to use a very popular platform called Notion. I'm just going to type notion.com. So I've typed out the URL for the website. Then I'm going to say, okay. So once you type out the URL to the website, it tries to create or establish some sort of connection so that it can actually pull the data for you. But you still need to do some additional confirmation. So now what it's doing, it's trying to pull the different tables or like the different data. So it's actually doing the reading and the extraction of the data. Now, once your data, once it has read the landing page, whatever, it can actually now pull the different sort of like views. So you can see that it's actually the web views. I'm going to enable this. So the web view, this actually shows you that the landing page for the website you've selected actually looks like. So this is what the website actually looks like. So it has probably extracted data from this landing page and it has created all these different tables that I can now use for my analysis. Now, if you look at the first table, if I go to table view, sorry. So the first table one, it's actually the different languages that are offered by the website, right? If you go to table two, this is part of that information that was just there below. Then table three, it's still the website information. So it has literally scraped all the different sort of like data that is sitting on that particular landing page. And now you can even see that we know how much each of the different services would actually cost by just having it scrape the data. And you could assign a different column name and stuff like that. So this is a really cool feature because now you can import data from websites. So I'm just going to select this one and I'm going to load the data set. If you want to transform it, add new columns and do all the fancy sort of like analytical procedures, you can obviously do that. But I've just selected this data so that I wanted to load. Maybe we can actually use it for our analysis. So it normally takes a bit of time depending on the size or let's say the amount of data that you've actually imported for you to do your analysis. So once the data set is ready, it's going to appear over here. So now, cool. So now I can go ahead and maybe change this into service. So you see, literally you're saving yourself time of having to type all of this, and you never know that it might actually take you longer to actually do that. Then I can just call this one price. Cool. Now we've got a whole data set with prices and all of that. So that's how you import data from a website. So next time you've got data from a website that you want to extract, That's how you actually do it. Now we've done from web. Now the other cool feature is you can actually import data from a table. Now this one I would call it cheating because it's literally I'm just gonna go to the employee data set. This is the same data set that we used in episode one. So for example, let's say I don't want all of this data because it's a little bit too much and I feel like it's gonna take up a lot of space. Maybe I'm just concerned about the employee ID and the name, right? So what I will do is I'll go to, let me just click on an empty area from data. So now if you say from data or range, so this allows you to specify the range of the data that you want. Now if I extract everything up until 30, so I've got the employee name and the employee ID, and I'm going to stop over there. And now I'm going to say my table is headers. I'm going to say okay. So now because I've said okay, it's now trying to create a new table, right? So you guys can now see that this is actually the data that are actually scraped, and now we can see this data over here. So now I don't know why it's doing it like that. So what I want to do basically is to be able to load this data set. Okay, I'm just gonna go to the top. Then I'm gonna say close and load. So now I've closed and loaded this data set. Now, because I'm happy with the data and I've created a new data set from an existing data set. So this is really cool, but I think like you can also save time by just copying and pasting, right? I feel like it's not really much of a necessity, but it's a feature that Microsoft actually has. That's how you can actually do it. Now, the last part or the last way that you can actually import data. So this is where you find they've tried to put all of them together. So you can actually get data from a file. So if they, you can actually import data from another Excel document, which is also cool. You can literally just say Excel, and what this will do, it will go and look at the different Excel documents that you actually sort of have. So these are the different sort of data sets that I actually have. I can select employee data set, which is supposedly the same data set as the one over here. So once you click on that, you can actually get it very similar to how we did a TXT. You can see the data set, right? Very same data set. And if you want to, you can just load that data set. So that's how you can actually, you can also import data from other Excel documents. Your data is sitting, if let's say you've got 10 different Excel documents, but you want to bring that data together into just one area, you can actually do it using that technique. Now, there's different files, obviously, that you can get data from. You can now see the CSV, there's XML, JSON. So it's really flexible in that manner that you can literally bring data from different platforms, even PDFs, right? You can literally extract data from PDFs, which I think is a very cool feature, but I don't think I've got PDFs that I can actually use for this. So yeah, very cool way of actually importing data. The other way is you can actually import data from a database. Now, this is a very cool feature because look, sometimes you don't want to extract data, right? You don't want to, maybe the data is too massive and you just want to establish a connection onto the different sort of database. So you can say from SQL Server. So this is a cool way if you've got a SQL Server database that you just want to connect to. All you need to do is to specify the server that you want to connect to and the name of the table that you want to get the data from. And once you've done that, you can then import your data. Now, for you guys that are good in SQL, you can actually instead of actually doing it that way, you can actually specify to say select maybe the data from, maybe select star. This is selecting everything. You can specify and then from maybe you can say a, right? So this really allows you to specify where exactly you want to import the data. I think it's a really good feature. So yeah, this is a really good way if especially if you just want to connect to a data source. So there's different ways, even connecting from Azure SQL database, Synapse, and stuff like that. You only need to specify the path that actually is required or the server and all of that. So those are the different ways, really. I think the key ones are the ones over there, but these are the other sort of advanced options that you have in actually importing data. You see that you can also import data from a lakehouse. These ones would normally require you to actually have those platforms existing. Otherwise, it doesn't really work. So you can see that you'd need to sign into the lakehouse for you to be able to access the information. So if you've got login details, you just sign in, then you can get different tables that you can actually add for your import and analysis. So yeah, so those are the different ways that you can actually import data. So next time, if you've got a data set that maybe you're not familiar with, let's say it's not part of the files from table, you can actually see this is Microsoft Access. So each and every single option that is out there, I think is always normally covered by Excel for you to be able to import the data and start doing analysis. So in a nutshell, that is how you do analysis, and that's how you actually import data from the different